Most people think retirement is about hitting a certain age 62, 65, even 70. But the truth is, retirement has very little to do with your birthday and everything to do with your cash flow. In this episode of Retire Stronger, we're going to show you why retirement readiness is defined by income, not age, and how the right planning can help you step away from work on your own terms, years earlier than you might think. Welcome back to Retire Stronger, episode 31. I'm John Foard, and I'm here with my partner, Bill Kearney. Today's conversation is one we think will really shift the way you think about retirement. So many people come to us and say, John, Bill, I just turned 60. Am I ready to retire? Or I'm working until 67 because that's when Social Security kicks in. And we always tell them, retirement isn't about an age. It's about having a plan for cash flow. What do we mean by that? Well, when your paycheck stops, your bills don't. You still need a reliable income, not just for a year or two, but for decades. Retirement is really about replacing your paycheck with a smart, tax-efficient income plan, and that's what today's episode is all about.
Yeah, that's exactly right, John. Good to be with you once again. Today we're going to break this down into three big sections. First, we're going to show you how to think about retirement income, what you actually need, how to calculate it, how to separate wants versus needs. Second, we're going to look at the sources of retirement cash flow, Social Security, pension, investments, annuities, real estate, and how each of these fit into a bigger strategy. And then third, we'll cover the often overlooked side of this conversation, taxes, inflation, and healthcare costs. Because it's not just about gross income, it's about what you get to keep. So by the end of this episode, our hope is that you'll be able to see that retirement is not just a finish line tied to an age, but it's a milestone tied to readiness. Readiness means you've got the cash flow to sustain the life you want and the peace of mind to enjoy it.
Yeah, so that's well said, Bill. And so how much do you actually need, right? So let's kind of talk through that part. We get that question so often, like how much do I need? What's my magic number? We've talked about that in the past and in previous episodes as well, that this idea of a magic number is a bit of a myth, so to speak. So let's just start with the big question. How much income do you need in retirement? And most people think of it, again, as a lump sum. Like, do I have $1 million saved? But the real question is, what monthly or annual income do you need to cover your lifestyle? And what we're talking about there is cash flow planning. The numbers are different for everyone, but research tells us a couple of things. The average retiree spends roughly 70 to 80% of their pre-retirement income to maintain their lifestyle in retirement. So if you earned $150,000 while working, you might target $105,000 to $120,000 in retirement income. But here's where it gets tricky. Some costs go down, like commuting, driving into work and home, saving for retirement, payroll taxes. Those things are going to go down most likely in retirement. While other expenses are going to go up, like healthcare, travel, helping your kids or grandkids. And of course, let's not forget inflation. So you need a plan that maps these out. And one exercise we use with clients is what we call the essential versus lifestyle split. Essentials are things like housing, food, utilities, insurance, things you're just not able to skip out on. Lifestyle is travel, dining out, hobbies, gifts, things of those nature, right? So putting real numbers on those buckets, you see what kind of base income you must have and what kind of flexible income you would like to have.
Yeah, and this is the key, John, because your sources of retirement income aren't going to be all the same. Some are guaranteed, like Social Security or pensions. Others are flexible but variable, like investment withdrawals. So if you line up your essentials with the guaranteed sources, it can help you sleep a little bit better at night. And then you can use the investment accounts to fund lifestyle extras. And I'll just, as a little sidebar here, mention that what's really, really nice is to have a plan that shows you how much of your income currently is structured to be guaranteed and how much of it is
Hmm.
currently structured to be variable. Because that helps you figure out, do I have those essentials covered? And where am I going to get money for the lifestyle needs that I have, the lifestyle wants that I have? So
Hmm.
this is where people often make the mistake of thinking, well, I can't retire until I'm 67. Well, no. I mean, if your essential needs are covered and you've built a sustainable plan for lifestyle income, you can retire at 62 or 60 or earlier. It's not about age, it's about matching income to expenses so that when you're ready to turn on the paycheck from yourself as opposed to from your employer, your plan can sustain that for the long term.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, you just brought up basically, how we approach the initial steps when talking to a client about cash flow planning, which is, well, we first have to determine where their income sources are and where they're coming from. And so, let's kind of walk through what the main sources of retirement cash flow can be. So, first, you have Social Security. It's the foundation for most retirees, quite frankly. And the average benefit in 2025 is around $1,900 per month. But of course, it depends on your earnings, your earnings record while you were working, and when you decide to file. So what I mean by that is what age, right? So claiming early at 62, it's going to lock in a permanent deduction or sorry reduction in your income. Waiting until age 70 gives you the maximum benefit, and it's about an 8% more for every year you wait beyond full retirement age. But remember, Social Security was never designed to be, to fully fund your retirement income. At best, it covers 30 to 40% of your income needs for most people, which is just not going to be enough. What do you say about that, Bill?
Yeah, it's true. It's a nice supplement for a lot of what we see client wise, and I think along those lines would be something like a pension, which
Hmm.
it's kind of like finding a Model T on the road these days. If you find somebody with a pension, because they are really becoming rare. But if you have one, it is a powerful guaranteed income stream. Um, the key decisions on pensions are, do I take a lump sum and potentially put it into a guaranteed income structure myself? Um, you know, how do I do the survivor benefits on it? Do I do it single or joint on the income feature? So these choices affect not just you, but your spouse and your tax situation. And oftentimes, the one drawback to pensions is that we do find they can hamper your tax optimization strategies moving forward if you're trying to get closer to, say, like a low tax bracket in retirement. So,
Expand
pension,
upon that real quick, what you mean by that, so that the folks listening can kind of
yeah,
understand
exactly.
your thoughts.
Generally, most of the time when we see pensions, this is a taxable event, a taxable income event. And
Hmm.
if it's a lifetime structured pension, that is going to affect what your income is going to look like. And it's also going to affect maybe how you enact Roth conversions. It's going to have an impact on what your overall tax situation looks like. And it will change the calculation on how tax optimization is created. So, for a lot of folks, if they're trying to get to the lowest tax bracket or get down into a zero tax bracket in retirement, a pension may prevent you from being able to do that.
Yep,
The
because it's permanent, right? So like there's like once you sign the dotted line and you turn that income stream on, there's no reversing it.
No, and something else to think about as well is, if you do have a lump sum option, it's always interesting to run a side by side comparison on that pension income that is guaranteed through the employer source versus taking the lump sum and, say, putting it into a fixed index annuity or some type of annuity structure with a guaranteed income rider to see what is the income difference. Because remember, if you take the lump sum and you place it into an annuity structure that you also own the entire asset. So
Right.
should something happen to you, you can now leave that to your spouse or anyone else as well, where typically the company structured pension plan doesn't allow you to do that. So
Yeah,
just a
and not just an
rough,
annuity too. I mean, we're also you could also do that side by side comparison with just a straight investment plan as well of putting the money in the market if you are so inclined to take on risk with those dollars that you are taking out of a lump sum pension payout as well.
yeah, very very interesting. When we get to pensions, it's interesting because a lot of those were built and structured 30, 40 years ago, and so the
Hmm.
payout factors on them maybe don't quite keep up with some of the private structures you can create on there. So
Yep.
probably way more than we ever wanted to talk about related to pensions on that part. So let's move on to the investments here. This is where most of our clients hold the bulk of their retirement assets: 401ks, IRAs, brokerage accounts. And the question then becomes, how do you turn that nest egg into a reliable income stream? And there's a number of different approaches.
Hmm.
You've probably heard of the 4% rule, formerly known as the 5% rule, soon to be probably known as the 3.5 or 3% rule. But this is the rule that suggests what percentage you can apply to that nest egg and take withdrawals on an annual basis to the point at which you will not run out of money in retirement. That is a little bit of a tricky way to do it, but it is definitely an approach. There's also the
Hmm.
bucketing strategy, which we really love, where you have now, soon, and later buckets, right? And those are pretty self-explanatory on how those work. But your investment structures are different based on the time frame of when you think you're going to need your money. And then you've got, annuity options, annuity strategies where you trade a portion of your assets into an annuity structure for the resulting guaranteed income. So the right strategy really depends on your goals, your risk tolerance, and your overall tax picture, as we've already talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's don't forget to consider real estate, which can bring rental income. Downsizing the current home you're in to a smaller home, possibly, or even using home equity through a reverse mortgage can all be part of the cash flow puzzle. And then, you've already mentioned it, but there, I want to just remind everyone when they hear the word annuity that these are types of insurance based products, and these can be a controversial topic, quite frankly. But when used properly, they can actually serve as a bond alternative or even a guaranteed income stream. And the key is just making sure that your fees, the terms of the agreements, and the guarantees that are provided with these types of products, align with your overall plan of action that you're looking to put in place. So,
Yeah, exactly. And let's take a couple of minutes as we shift gears here into the conversation about taxes, inflation, and healthcare. Um, we've talked about, especially tax optimization, on several other episodes that we've done, John. But this is where a lot of retirees get surprised.
mhm.
This is it's not just about generating the income that you need. It's really about keeping as much of your money as possible. And taxes play a huge role on the ultimate success of your retirement plan. They play a huge role in what your longevity picture looks like, the longevity of your assets. So take RMDs, required minimum distributions. We just did an episode on this previously. Once you hit age 73 under current law, the IRS forces you to start withdrawing from your pre tax accounts like your 401k and your IRAs. So this can push you into a higher tax bracket and even trigger higher Medicare premiums. And you may not even need the money at this point in time. We find that oftentimes people don't need the money at this point in their life. So the key here is to plan for this in your 60s or even earlier.
Yeah,
Plan for
earlier for
this
sure.
so that it doesn't blindside you in your 70s. A really great tax optimization goal is to get to the point where your required minimum distributions on an annual basis are equal to or lower than your household standard deduction.
Hmm.
If you can get to that point, that is generally, just in a general sense, that is a very well optimized part of your plan. So keep that in mind on there. So this is where we're big believers in the Roth conversions. We have to work this into every episode by contract. So this is the point of the episode where we start talking about Roth conversions. If you've heard us talk about this on the 30 other episodes that we've done, just tune us out for a minute. But if you're new to it, you know, this is where converting money from the pre-tax side to the Roth early on, early in your 60s in particular, can reduce your future tax burden and give you a lot more flexibility in retirement. They need to be done and structured carefully and responsibly, but this can be an extremely powerful tool for you as you move into your 70s and later into retirement.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about inflation as well. So let's just do some quick math here. Like at 3% inflation, your cost of living doubles in about 24 years' time. So a $100 grocery bill today could be $200 when you're 85. Your plan needs to account for that, which means keeping some exposure to growth assets like equities, even in retirement. And I know that you know that's becoming sometimes controversial topic when you're talking with individuals who are looking to scale back on risk. But the reality is we need to have growth in your portfolio. And then that also, comes down to the fact that, we don't want to forget about healthcare costs in retirement. Fidelity did some research and it shows the average people retiring today will need over $300,000 for healthcare expenses over their lifetime. That's not including long term care. Medicare helps, but it doesn't cover everything. So you need a plan for premiums. You need a plan for out of pocket costs and expenses, and then potentially long-term care insurance or alternatives in order to help in those areas as well. Anything you want to add to that, Bill?
No, it's a great point. I mean, if you start to combine these costs for healthcare expenses combined with an inefficient tax picture, that's where we go back to this whole concept of it's not about your age and it's not about a lump sum. I call it the lawnmower number, where you're walking around cutting your grass and you're thinking about the giant lump sum number you're trying to get to retire. It's
Hmm.
really not, because that is important. We obviously need a lump sum so that you can work with that and structure that correctly. But structuring it correctly and optimizing it correctly are what helps you actually be successful in retirement here, because these costs are going to be there. $300,000 for healthcare expenses is a lot, right? And then
Yeah,
we add in long-term care, right? Then you add in taxes, which may be, twice or three times as much as you think from a cumulative standpoint, on here. So yeah, uh, all of this is extremely important. This is why we always talk about planning and how important it is to start planning sooner rather than later.
absolutely. I could not agree more. So let's do a quick recap here. So, what we're trying to tell you folks is that retirement isn't about hitting a certain age. It's about whether you've built a reliable, tax efficient cash flow plan. We talk about determining your income needs, lining up essential expenses with guaranteed income, and using investments and or other tools for a lifestyle flexibility. We also cover the importance of planning for taxes, inflation, and healthcare costs, like we just talked about here towards the end, because what you keep matters as much as what you earn. And at the end of the day, retirement is about freedom to work if you want to, travel when you want to, and enjoy life without the constant worry of, do I have enough?
Yeah, exactly, John. And I would just say that's where we come in. At Crown
Hmm.
Advisors, this is what we do every day. We help families build retirement income plans that go beyond just the investment numbers, plans that give them confidence, that help them sleep on the windy nights, right? And so, if you'd like to talk about your own situation, you've got a couple of ways that you can do that. First of all, go to our website, crownadvisorgroup.com. That's Crown, CROWN, advisor, no S, group.com. And you'll see a button on the top right that says complimentary assessment. So you can do something there to start taking action here in a private setting where you don't have to worry about talking to anyone if you don't want to. All right. That's the first step. But if you really want to reach out and have a conversation, you can email us at info@crownadvisorgroup.com. You can call our office, 704-469-0200. Um, but the point here is to take that action, right? Step up and make that call. It's an important call, an important step to kind of get beyond where you are today and start working through these plans so you can have peace and confidence as you move forward here. And don't forget, you can listen to our podcast on several different mediums: Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music, and you can watch us on YouTube if you would like to actually see what we look like from that standpoint. If you don't do it that way, certainly. But just we want you to reach out to us if you have questions, comments, concerns. We would love to help you. Don't wait until 65 to ask if you're ready. Start now, build your plan, and let's retire stronger. Thanks everyone for joining us.